one of our themes, and I thought, well, what kind of skills are we talking about? We've heard a little bit about it from the previous speakers. And then I thought, well, what kind of future are we talking about? I thought, okay, I know what they're expecting from me. You want predictions, don't you? You brought me in here so I can say, the future will be this, or the future will be that. Well, the bad news is I am taking advice from somebody who was asked a question about predicting, and they said, prediction is very difficult, especially about the future. And considering who said this, I think I bow to his judgment. There's a question mark after Niels Bohr because I don't know that he was the first person to say it. Niels Bohr, the quantum physicist, he was asked that. The question he was asked when he gave that answer was, he was asked to predict what impact quantum physics would have on the world in the future, and he said prediction is very difficult, especially about the future. It would be lovely to be able to tell him now that it has an integral part in the whole of modern electronics, and without the work that he was doing, we would not be living the lives we now are, but he wasn't going to predict that. So if I'm not prepared to do predictions, I'm not prepared to say, I will predict that in the future you need these skills, what's the point of standing here? And I think my view is we cannot predict, but we can prepare. In times gone by, when I was younger, and certainly when my parents were younger, we were encouraged to predict where we were going to be, not just what our area of work, but the company we were going to work for life, what it was going to be. Now, we're in a world where we need to prepare for the future, and it's a different kind of world. But having said that, there is an app. There is an app that predicts the future, and I think many of you will have used it. It's not the weather forecast one, that only predicts a few, days ahead. There is an app that predicts years, decades ahead. Go on, who has used Aging Booth? You put in your photo and it shows you what you will look like in 10... Go on, she has! Have you? Oh, somebody must have. Somebody, yes, it's got it. Thank you. And, yes, you look like your mum or dad, basically. That's what you look like, which is not... I've got a photo. Here we go. There we are. You've got... Why are you laughing? The picture on the left is me in the late 1980s. It was quite fashionable to look at it. Okay, you're all too young. You do not believe it. Just wait. In 30 years' time, you're going to get photos out, and young people are going to go, you really look like that? So I thought this is great. There you go. You've got the picture. They age you. You can just put in skills on the left, and it'll come out on the right with what we need to be. That's a fraud, isn't it? It's not the real Aging Booth. I was not prepared to pay 69 pence to buy Aging Booth again. But the thing about Aging Booth, and there's a serious comment here, is that it's not really true. It makes a really big mistake. And you can tell it's not Aging Booth because the picture on the right, I'm not wearing the same clothes. Thank goodness. I haven't got the ribbon in my hair. I haven't got the white polo neck with the braces. And that's because the context has changed. Yes, they can put wrinkles on your face and grey in your hair, but they can't predict what the world is that you're going to be living in. And I think that there is a danger that if we just try to look at the future of technology, future tech, and if we only look at that on its own, we could make the same mistakes that the Aging Booth does. We don't look at the broader context that we might find ourselves in. Now, the programme that Jackie mentioned that I worked for was called Tomorrow's World. For 4 years, a live half-hour TV show at prime time looking at science and technology. Now, if you ask people in the UK, they will probably say it predicted the future. I did not see it that way. We looked at what was technologically possible. And the reason I say that is we looked at it from a technology and science point of view, not from a social point of view. For example, I demonstrated this in the early 90s. This was the first commercially available video phone. So how many of you have got on the telephone table in the hall the one telephone which is a video phone that you go into the hall and you sit down at the table and there you have the little screen that goes at 3 frames a second so you can have the children talking to that cost £500, but it was only any good if Grandma had one as well. It didn't take off, but we didn't get it completely wrong because what we use is this. The concepts were right, that people do want to see each other when they talk. We use FaceTime, we use Skype, you can put images on Facebook, you can put images on Twitter, you can send videos to each other. We do it, but we do it in a different context to what we actually predicted. Interestingly, other things that haven't happened that I demonstrated, I drove on live television a car without a steering wheel, with just a joystick. That was very memorable because I knew that I had to drive it into the studio, stop in front of the cameraman, not run over the cameraman, and then I turned to the left and there would be a camera there with auto cue on the front, which would remind me what I had to say. And I was very nervous just driving this car with a joystick. I wasn't of the generation that had had a lot of experience with this. And I stopped and I thought, thank goodness, turned and looked, and it said, rebooting. Somebody had tripped over the cable for the auto cue computer, and it was live television. I talked about that car for about 3 minutes. It wasn't what necessarily people, it was all right, but it wasn't what people were expecting me to say. But a more positive thing is I came yesterday through the Channel Tunnel, and I remember reporting, whilst it was still being dug, I went down there and I did a piece about the tunnel boring machines, about what the future was going to be, and every time I go through it now, I think, at least we got something right. But I think I said that we were looking at what was technologically possible. Yes, I think there was quite a lot that in the past people have gone wrong about. That's the Jetsons, that is not the world we live in now. But I think that we've now realised there are more questions we need to ask, not just what is technically possible, it's also what are our priorities. And that's not just the priorities of the CEOs, of the mum generation, it's the priorities of the whole society. What is affordable? It does actually matter, because people said to me, all those things you showed on Tomorrow's World, why did they not happen? And I said there are 2 main reasons. One is that people didn't actually want them, and the other was people were not prepared to pay for them. So that's a different thing from, is it affordable? It's actually, are people prepared to pay for it? And now there's a much more concern about how is something made, how are we actually going to benefit from it? What is the point? Where did it come from? What is the whole life cycle of this piece of technology? And most importantly, who is it for? It's not just for the people who've actually made it, who want to sell it. So there are a lot more questions that people are asking. But if you want me to make predictions, I'm afraid I'm going to stand here and say, I don't really know. There are people who do make predictions about future jobs, saying, oh, well, you know, if you really want to make sure that you can be a personal bot maintenance engineer, or that you can be an avatar counsellor. And I'm thinking, a little bit dodgy. I'm not sure I'm going to put all my eggs in that basket. So predicting the future, tricky. I'm not going to promise about that. I'm just going to say let's prepare for it. But how about this skills business? How can we prepare skills for an unknown future. Now, of course, I'm going to talk about the importance of engineering and technology skills. I'm fascinated in what came back from the previous two, saying core skills as opposed to specifics are really important that then become transferable, but also you need the ability to learn up the niche skills that satisfy a particular need. And I think that if we see engineering and technology like that, then that's a very useful way. It's a mindset that gives you the ability to have specific expertise that you can acquire very quickly. But there's something that I feel about engineering and technology skills. This is currently seen as something that's expertise. I've been involved in promoting opportunities from studying science and maths in school, and still a lot of parents think that going into science is specialist, where if you stay in the humanities, you do history, you do English, that is more general. And I'm trying to explain, actually you close more doors with those subjects. If you're doing your maths, your physics, your chemistry, you're actually keeping more doors open at the moment. And if we can make it more of a life skills, that is something that not just experts do, but is accepted generally. And I was delighted to see that there was talk about influencing the next generation. Even if your generation get it right, there's another generation coming along behind that need to be infused. I've put them down as employability skills, soft skills, whatever it might be, hugely important. And it's not necessarily that these are skills that are learned through the workplace. Another thing that I would like to see on the list for employers is to recognise skills that have been acquired in different ways. One of the additional things I do that Jackie didn't mention is I support youth theatre projects locally. And in the summer there was a workshop, and these young people were using all those skills of team working, individual working, but recognising the broader business objective, which was you can't all be a diva, you have to work together when you're on the stage. They don't necessarily see those as anything other than fun, but actually the skills they've acquired, if they can apply them in the workplace, are hugely valuable to employers. But the last one is leadership and entrepreneurial skills, because if we don't know what the future is going to be, that is partly because you are the people who can create that future. And it depends on people with these leadership and entrepreneurial skills to make the future what it's going to be. There has been a mention of diversity and the gender agenda, the lack of women going into engineering and into the automotive industry in particular. I've been involved in promoting opportunities in engineering for girls for 25 years. And I have to say it's actually quite depressing, because I thought we would not still be doing it now. I really thought that it would not be an issue. But it is still an issue, and I think we need to find different ways of doing it. There are two new initiatives in the UK, and I just want to briefly share these with you because they're completely different ways of going about it, and it might be a way of you thinking about how you can apply your ideas. One, Talent 2030, has come from a report from the Council for Industry and Higher Education. It's a formal organisation that's done a report and recognised that we need to have more women in science and engineering. They're now looking at ways of using social networking to reach out to young people and influencers. However, Science Girl has grown from social networking, grown from the ground up. It's a reaction to the European Commission It's a Girl Thing video, where their concern was not how the women were represented, but the fact that that video didn't really have much science in, which is what they felt should be being put over. So that is a group of people who've got together who are now going to do a calendar for next year that is showing women in scientific environments. They are ground up. It's a completely different way of doing things. And I just encourage you to think about, when you are creating your future, which way that you do it. So skills for the future. The only recommendation I can give for you is the importance of being a lifelong learner. Don't think it stops, it keeps going. And in terms of the future, there's a lovely quote that I like, which says, in terms of the future, there are three kinds of people: those who make it happen, those who let it happen, and those who wonder what the hell happened. Which type are you? Which type are you? And if we talk about skills, surely the most valuable skill is to be able to create the future that you want to live in. So let me just finish with one final quote. The future depends on what you do today. Not just today in general, but actually today. What a wonderful opportunity, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be with you today.
Kate, I think the idea of an aging booth sounds absolutely horrendous. It's not the 69p so much as I just don't want to know. I've already seen enough of it, frankly, and I'd rather stop here. Any quick questions for Kate? Lots to think about, lots of challenges. Any quick questions for Kate before we move on? Because if not, I've got... I see. Hang on. Right at the back again. Exactly. You're keeping me fit today, you are, sir. Hang on a second. Please.
It's a quick one as well. You talked about engineering and technology, and you kind of touched a little bit other disciplines like humanities and stuff like that. Do you think that in the auto industry especially, there's too much innovation thought as from an engineering perspective and too little from other disciplines?
When I think of engineering, I mean it in its most broadest sense. And I think there is a value of everybody who is involved in taking technology forward to have a very good understanding of engineering and technology. That doesn't mean that I don't think we need economists, we don't need social scientists, we don't need visionaries. However, we do need a lot more people who have a good, strong understanding of engineering, even if they're not actually directly using that in the workplace.
Can I ask one other question? You talked about leadership and entrepreneurial skills. How do you teach those things? Because it's an endless debate in Brussels, in the EU, among policymakers. How do we make people more entrepreneurial? How do you actually teach those skills, do you think?
I don't think you can teach them, however you can support people's development of them, and that can happen right at the beginning in school, which is when people have ideas. Instead of saying, well, that's a bit of a silly idea, you say, how would you take that further? How would you take that further? I run an after-school club for STEM, science, technology and engineering and maths, for 10 to 12-year-olds. And in their normal teaching, they are encouraged, that if they're asked a question, they will often be told, that's not what we're covering today, I'm sorry, we can't deal with that. If they come and ask me a question, say, can I have a go at doing such and such? I'll say, yes, have a go, and then come back and tell everybody else how we got on with it. And so it's giving open space and supporting that learning, rather than closing down and saying, this is the knowledge you need.
Okay, thank you. An open space, I know, in the workshop section is exactly what they're going to be providing with. Kate, thank you so much. I promised you some inspiration. This opening session, as it were. In a minute, I'm going to hand over to Pamon and Cyril to take you through the workshops. They'll tell you what happens next. I just want to say a couple of things about the rest of the day this afternoon. As I say, I will be playing this role this afternoon. First thing to know is the room's going to look completely different. In that this will be pushed back, this will be a little base to me, but there will be two sides, armchairs all round. You'll be sitting in among, there's no stage. This time, those who were here last year will remember there was a stage, I was on it with the big, great and good, and you were sitting down. There is no stage. You will be sitting in armchairs like this with the policymakers and the CEOs among you. They will speak from their seats. They will not make a speech. They will only answer questions. They will answer, just so you know how it works, a first question from me just to get us started, and then I'm really hoping that all the other questions will come from you, that you will drive it. So all through your workshops, be thinking about those questions, and they will take you through, Ramon and Cyril will take you through that process. I only have one request. Your questions should be, or comments, you can make comments as well as questions, sharp, short, and to the point. We have 40 minutes to talk innovation, we have 40 minutes to talk skills. It isn't long. I do need to give the CEOs and the policymakers a chance to answer your questions. I'm going to shut them up if they talk for too long. That's probably my biggest job, to make sure you have the conversation with us. Please try to enjoy. I won't pick on anyone. I'm not going to come and say, so, what do you think, Daniel? You signal to me if you want to ask a question. If you really don't, and you're looking at me in a sort of interested way, and I sort of come towards you just here. The idea is I'm there to help you. I'm your friend. If you all dry up, I'll ask them some questions. But please, let's not let that happen. Try to enjoy it. I think the format, the setting, will enable you to enjoy it because you'll feel much more comfortable than if they're on the stage and you're sort of down here. So that's what we're going to do this afternoon. I'll be with you, and as I say, try. Most important thing today is to enjoy it, have fun, and make the most of the opportunity to have a conversation with these guys and ask them the questions you really want answers to. And with that, I would like to hand over to Ramon and Cyril, who will tell you what's going to happen next. Do you want this, guys, or do you want that?
We want both.
You want both. There you go, sir.